everyone. I think I know pretty much everyone in here, so thank you so much for joining me today as I talk about the healing power of gratitude. My name is Carah Solemsaas, and I'm a certified health and wellness coach. I guess before I get started, is the volume okay? If anyone can't hear me or if I need to speak up, just feel free to write in the chat. I'm kind of learning how to maneuver a webinar. I use Zoom all the time, but it is not second nature to me. So just let me know, please. So before I get started, I just want to talk a little bit about myself and my background, just toot my own horn a little. So as I said, I'm a certified health coach. And within my role as a health coach, I partner with individuals in reaching their optimal state of health and well-being. So that is done through goal setting, utilizing their strengths, living in alignment with their values, and meeting the client where they are at in life. So although I can't see all of you, you can go ahead and nod to yourself. I just want to make this somewhat interactive too. If you think back to different goals that you've set for yourself, I mean, how many of you felt like, okay, I'm just going to jump into it, feeling super ambitious, wanting to do everything all at once, when in reality, your current lifestyle did not allow for that. Just like activity, for example, if you're someone that wants to start exercising every day and you haven't worked out in months, I mean, cough, cough, quarantine, it's going to be hard for you to just jump back into that and do it all at once because your body is going to tell you, hey, this is probably too much. So in my role as a health coach, I really help people to maneuver that and assist and partner with you because you are the one that is the expert of your own body. And I'm just here to help in any way that I can. So again, within my role of health coaching, I take a whole person approach, meaning that the client and I take a look into all areas of well-being. And we somewhat investigate what may or may not be serving them or what they want to incorporate more of, what's going to serve them in this time. So for example, I had a client who wanted to explore mindful awareness. And a big part of that is I think mindfulness is such a buzzword these days, and it's this new quote unquote fad. However, there's a lot of evidence to support the practice of it and the practice of being present in life. And so what she did was she incorporated yoga consistently, and she's a busy teacher. So she would do yoga during her breaks at school. And she noticed just from that she was experiencing less anxious feelings. She was sleeping better. She was wanting to participate in more healthy behaviors. So you can see that focusing in on one area has a ripple effect in all the other areas too. So that was my rant about health coaching. I do offer services apart from my current position as a graduate assistant, which I'll talk more about in a second. But I have my information at the end. If you or if a friend or a loved one or a stranger is interested in health coaching, please give them my information and I would be open to discussing that with them. So as my current role, I am a graduate assistant for the Sanford Center for Aging. So they are a nonprofit within the University of Nevada School of Medicine. So they're a separate entity, but they work within the university's realm. And within that, their mission is to enhance the quality of life and well-being for older adults. And so they do this through different translational research that they're a part of, as well as education. So they have a gerontology academic program. So for students that go to UNR, if they have an interest in the field of aging, that is an outlet for them. And then the last piece, which is the one that I'm a part of, is community outreach. So that's where I facilitate, or I'm a leader, a health educator for different chronic disease self-management programs. So again, it has to do with behavior change, meeting people where they're at, and teaching them different skills so that they can learn to manage their chronic diseases on their own. So all about self-efficacy too. I am also a nutrition educator for the nonprofit On Common Ground. So I do SNAP Ed, which was formerly known as food stamps. They have different curriculums and I teach that to people who are eligible for SNAP. I do it through Zoom right now and everything else, just because that's the way our world is. And so working within that realm. And then lastly, I will be starting a podcast show called the Tuning In From Within podcast. So it's going to be all things well-being, similar to what we're talking about here today. Gratitude is a piece of well-being. So if you enjoy this podcast or you just love the sound of my voice, whatever you want to take from this, please tune into that. We're looking at launching that in the fall. And we'll be doing all things well-being that could look like intuitive eating, talking about sleep and sleep hygiene, gratitude, etc. So just some housekeeping items. So as you probably noticed, everyone is muted from the start. If you want to ask questions, you can use the chat, but I have the power essentially to unmute you. And I would love to hear your voice because it's kind of draining to have to, hear your own voice the whole time. So if you do have a question, feel free to use the hand raising option on here. Under more, I think it allows you to do that. I know that there's another area. If not, you can just use the chat and say, oh, I have a question, or this is my question. And then I'll unmute you and maybe we can have a conversation that way if that works. And then I wanted to point out that at the end, the slideshow will be sent to your email the day after the webinar, to the email that you registered at. And then if you want the recording or if you want to share that with people, it's going to be available on YouTube. And again, I'll have my information at the end. We can send that out to you as well. All right. So what is my connection to gratitude? What is all the hype about? So gratitude is something that I practiced for the last few years, but it was never consistent. Just like a lot of different tools that we have in our lives, they serve us at different times. So what I would do when I would practice gratitude is, apart from Thanksgiving, which I think most of us practice gratitude intentionally during that time, I would write 3 things down probably once a week at night just to reflect on it. And I noticed that it felt good when I did that, but again, it wasn't consistent. So what happened is it went by the wayside, just like everything else. So last year, I started graduate school, which I forgot to mention too. I'm a Master of Public Health student at the university, and grad school was very overwhelming. It was a lot of work thrown at you at once, and it felt like you just have to do everything, and you're constantly on this hamster wheel trying to catch up. So as many other people have experienced, when you get into something that's so busy, you start to drop all of the things that keep you afloat. So I stopped exercising as much because I wasn't sleeping as well, so I was trying to sleep in. And then I wasn't meditating in the morning because I didn't give myself enough time to do that, so it was very inconsistent. I was also relying on coffee more heavily, which I started to get headaches when I stopped drinking it consistently. If anyone else has been there, it is no fun. And no judgment to people that need coffee in the morning, I get it. But it was to the point where I was just exhausted, I was frustrated, I was stressed out, and just was not enjoying it. So this was about the first month of grad school. Then I thought back to what are the different tools that I have in my quote unquote toolbox to help me with my well-being, because I can't keep living my life like this, especially as a soon-to-be health coach, right? I gotta live what I'm preaching. So what I started to do was think back to gratitude and start to implement that more consistently. So every single night, I wrote down 3 things that I was grateful for. And that was really challenging because I was really stressed out and was kind of annoyed. So when I started to do that, legitimately, after a month of doing that consistently, I was waking up a whole new person. I was seeing things differently. I just felt grateful about life in general. I felt less stressed out. I started to meditate more. I started to sleep better. I started to eat better and meal prep. And so again, it's one of those things that when you implement that one thing, that might be the glue that keeps everything together so that those other areas of your well-being are starting to improve as well. So that is my proof that gratitude works, at least for my testimonial. And then we'll talk about more studies moving forward. So what is gratitude? Gratitude is the recognition of good things in the world, the good doings by others, and the good that we have received. And it's made up of 3 key pillars. So the first one being joy. And joy is produced by looking for the good, even in challenging situations, just like when I was really stressed out in grad school. You can ask yourself, what did I learn from this? Because again, when you are suffering or in those moments, there's usually something that you can learn from so that you either don't make the same mistake next time or so that you can reflect like, oh, this happened for this reason. So looking for the good. The second pillar is grace. And grace is produced by taking in the good. So it's reflecting, embracing ungrateful moments, objects, even deeds from others, and really absorbing what was there. So it's not just looking at it saying, oh, I'm grateful for this, this, and this. It's actually thinking about, oh, that was so nice of them to do that, and really letting it sink in. And the third key pillar is love. And love is produced by giving back the good. So that could be volunteering, it could be paying it forward. If anyone's ever been on the receiving end of paying it forward, it's awesome and it feels so good. It could just be me, but this is a perfect stranger that just paid for your coffee, especially when you're going to Starbucks and they're expensive, and that's a win. But paying it forward or having a conversation with a stranger, something where you were able to give back that good, give back that love, and have that feeling. Gratitude is also challenging our innate negative bias. So as humans, we tend to have a negative bias, and it's really a protective factor, and it originates from our most primitive instincts. So way back when, I'm sure you've heard this from other people in terms of stressors, we have certain protective factors within our bodies because we had to protect ourselves from wild animals and living out in the wild and learning to navigate those different areas so that we weren't killed. Nowadays, our stressors look a little bit different. They might be work stressors. They might be grad school. They might be just running into so many people and you're exhausted. And so the challenge with the negative bias is that it's not as useful as it used to be. So it's so easy for our brains to point out all of the negative things that happen in a day. It's easy. Oh, that person cut me off. They're the worst. Or, oh, that lady's talking to me too long. Like, I don't have time for this. I had a long day at work. So challenging that innate negative bias is when gratitude can really be helpful. And you'll notice a change in your perception on how you see those events. Gratitude also connects us to a greater force that's outside of ourselves. Whether you are spiritual or not, we are all connected in some way or another. And just really being able to resonate that gratitude is this bigger thing. And I really like this quote by Harold S. Kushner, where he says, if you concentrate on finding whatever is good in every situation, you will discover that your life will suddenly be filled with gratitude, a feeling that nurtures the soul. So what gratitude is not? I think that there's a stigma with gratitude. A lot of times people might think it's denying the negative experience happened. So if something very traumatic happened in your life, gratitude is not to say, oh, this happened, but life is good. I think I'm grateful for everything. No, it doesn't work like that. It's acknowledging what is there, but again, thinking about what can be reflected from that experience. Gratitude is not impossible when we are suffering. So when you practice gratitude as just a regular practice, however you want to do that, and I'll talk more about tips on how to do that in a couple slides over, but when you're able to do that outside of the moments when you're suffering, you are building that resiliency for when you enter those moments of suffering, you will have a different perspective on the situation. It doesn't mean that you won't suffer, because all humans suffer. There's a common humanity aspect within that. However, practicing gratitude, being grateful regularly is going to be a tool for you and help you in those situations. Gratitude is not another naive form of positive thinking. So again, it's not la-di-da, life is good, nothing ever bad happens, I'm grateful, or using the word at least. A lot of times we use that and we kind of minimize our situations. Well, at least it's not like this. Especially during COVID, I heard that a lot too. But again, it is not that. Gratitude is also not about having luck. So having the luck of good things occurring for you, when I think specifically of something like social media, people portray how their relationships look, how their life looks, they're going on all these adventures, and it just looks like they have the luckiest life. Of course, they could be grateful for it. It's easy. I mean, they get everything that they ever wanted. But it's really not about that, because of course, people are only portraying so much of what's the reality. And so apart from that, you really don't need to be lucky to be grateful. It is accessible to everyone. So what does the research say? What is the evidence behind this? So I'm just going to share two studies, because there's a lot of research out there. I put some of the links in my resources, so when you get that PowerPoint, if you are a research fiend, like I know some people are, please feel free to peruse through that. So the first study is Counting Blessings. So this was taken with 192 undergraduate students enrolled in a health psychology class. And so it was kind of like a homework assignment given to them. So they were given these packets randomly. And within each packet, they had 10 weeks of reporting. So there was a gratitude group, a group that would talk about their hassles or any negative events, and then a group that just talked about general events, like going to the doctor, running into someone kind of thing. So in addition to that, all groups reported on any physical symptoms or other feelings that they may have experienced that week. So it wasn't just those specific areas. And after 10 weeks, the gratitude group showed that they were more optimistic and felt better about their lives in general. They also exercised more and had fewer visits to the physician than those who focused on sources of aggravation. So I think there's no surprise there. If you are someone that practices gratitude and you're grateful, you're going to participate in healthy behaviors like exercise and not having to see the physician as often. The second study is mental health and healthcare professionals. This one's really interesting because it's such a demanding field, especially nowadays. And so the fact that they even had them do this study and had the time for it amazes me. So this one was taken with 102 practitioners, and they were split into 3 groups, so kind of similar to the last study. So there was a gratitude group, a hassles group, and then a group that didn't track anything or have a diary. So what they did was 2 times each week for a 4-week span, they recorded 5 things they were grateful for. The other group recorded what hassles were happening, and it was really just those 2 days. And then again, the no diary group. So those in the gratitude group showed significance in the reduction of stress and depressive symptoms and reporting more positive relationships with colleagues compared to the hassles and the control group. So one thing they noticed about the hassles in the control group was that they essentially had a lot of the same outcomes. And the control group, again, they didn't record anything, they just went on with their practice. And one thing that's really interesting about this study, it was only a 4-week span, and they already noticed these different outcomes, which are pretty significant for healthcare professionals. However, as time progressed and practitioners went back to their normal lives and their normal schedules, obviously not writing things that they're grateful for 2 times a week, they saw less significance in those areas. So there was slowly a decline in the reduction of stress and depressive symptoms. So it just goes to show that without the consistent practice, you're not going to get the results that you want. Also, I apologize if you hear my niece in the background or any of my nieces. They are right outside the other door. And one of the things with COVID is that you kind of learn to manage different spaces. And I'm grateful for that. So, all right. So what are some of the benefits of having a regular gratitude practice? Why is it even worth your time? So physically, people who have a regular practice have stronger immune systems, especially in terms of COVID. I mean, just that in itself, I think I'm sold. Also, a reduction in pain and aches. Chronic pain is really prevalent in the United States, and I've just been seeing it more and more. And so knowing that gratitude practice can be helpful for that is really, it's really positive. It's a great thing. Other physical symptoms are lowering blood pressure and cholesterol, getting better sleep. So many Americans are also sleep deprived or suffer insomnia. So this could be a good tool to use for that. Other ones are increased desire to participate in healthy behaviors, which I've been talking about over and over. So wanting to exercise more, wanting to eat healthier. There even has shown an improvement in inflammatory biomarkers in heart failure patients. Very interesting and very random. And of course, a reduction in rate of smoking too. So moving over to psychologically, people have noticed higher levels of positive emotions. People are more optimistic, greater feelings of joy and pleasure. People have experienced an increased resiliency to trauma. People feel less anxious and depressed, and overall just an increase in emotional well-being. And socially, people notice that they're more helpful and generous overall. They have greater compassion for themselves and for others. They're more outgoing. If you're introverted, don't worry. If you have a gratitude practice, it doesn't mean you're gonna start jumping out and talking to everyone. It doesn't change your personality like that, but I think you're just more inclined to want to connect further with random individuals. Also getting along better with others, and just more likely to pay it forward too. So now we're going to talk about some tips for incorporating a daily practice. So this is the one that I utilize. So writing 3 things down each day that you are grateful for. Even on the most challenging days, writing 3 things down is really hard, but it is really worth it in the end, because seeing that and knowing, oh, I forgot that those things happen, although my brain is going to that negative bias. You can even schedule 1 day a week to reflect on how often you felt grateful that week. So if you're someone that doesn't like to journal, because not everyone does, just thinking and just knowing that that was there and just taking a moment without being distracted on your phone and going, oh yeah, I'm grateful for that. Doing a gratitude meditation. So this is something that I do midday. A lot of times I'll go outside and do a guided one. There's this one app that I use called Insight Timer. I'll show you that at the end. I have a little icon for it, but it has a lot of great meditations, some for self-compassion, some for gratitude, a whole variety. The next one, you could count your blessings each day by actively noticing the positives you experienced. So that one's kind of similar to scheduling 1 day a week, except for it's more often. You can even take a moment to reflect on your favorite memories with friends, family, or loved ones. And what about those memories made it special? Another idea is to write down on a piece of paper every day, every other day, or once a week, whatever is your capacity, on what you are grateful for of your partner, or this could even be your roommate or loved one. You can place it in a jar and then read it at the end of the year or even at the end of the month. So just a reminder, hey, I'm grateful for all these things. Thank you so much for writing this down. I actually got that idea from King with Biointegrative Health. Great idea. So thank you for that. You can also reflect on a past accomplishment and quote unquote map out. So that would be drawing it out kind of like a web with who supported you in that event, along with reflecting on the gratefulness towards their support. So that's one thing that gratitude is very helpful with, is just remembering how to appreciate others and what they've done for you. Because yes, we live in a society that's very individualistic, but if you think back to all of those times where you accomplished something, a lot of times other people were involved, even if it was a really small role, but recognizing that they were there and they were a part of that journey with you. Another idea is to give thanks to your meals. A lot of people will pray to their meals too, or say a prayer during their meals, but even just reflecting on, thank you meal, all the different pieces of where it came from. If you eat meat like myself, reflecting on, thank you for sacrificing your life to be on my plate. I know that sounds a little intense, but really that is just the actual fact of it. One of my friends actually has a gratitude buddy, and they call each other each week to talk about all the good things that happen. I think a lot of times when we talk to our friends, yes, we do catch up in conversations, but we tend to vent a lot because there's just so much craziness with life. And not being able to talk about the good things is kind of something that you might be missing out, and a way to connect with someone else. And this last one, which I did on and off for a while, and I really enjoyed it, is to reflect on these 3 questions each day. So what did I do today that made me feel good? Or what did someone do today that made me feel good? And then thinking about, what did I do to make someone else feel good? Whether it was intentional or unintentional. And then the last piece, of course, is what did I learn today? So there's no coincidence that I keep going back to what did I learn today? How can we reflect on that? Just because it is a really important piece. And I actually got these 3 questions from a book that I'll share with you on the next slide. It's called The Stress Solution by Dr. Rangan. And he talks about the importance of reflection and how him and his family, they will talk about these 3 questions and answer them together every night for dinner. Because there's always something new that you can reflect on, that someone did for you, that you did for someone else. And then he talks about different stress management techniques too. I see. Okay, so there are a couple people in the chat. Hi, Sean. Welcome. And then Rachel Shower was saying, I also have this book, totally recommend it. Disclaimer, I sent that to Rachel because she's my sister. But thank you, Rachel, for the testimonial because it is a really good book and aesthetically, it's beautiful. So I wanted to share some additional support with you all too. So this again is going to be provided with you when you get the slides with the email that you registered with for this webinar. So the first one is the Little Book of Gratitude. So if you were looking at those suggestions that I had just talked about and you're thinking that just seems way too monotonous or I'm not going to remember any of that, this book is fantastic because it has different exercises that you can do daily, every other day, whatever works for you. But it's something different to kind of spice it up and just looking at gratitude in a different lens. The next one, and of course for the men in the audience too, and even for some of the women, I don't want to generalize. This book obviously has flowers and is, predominantly a little bit more feminine looking, but they have other ones out there too. This is just the one that I use and it's on Amazon and it's called Good Days Start with Gratitude. So they have different quotes in there that you can reflect on and read. And there's also different lines. So for each day you write the date and you can write down 3 things that you're grateful for. But I like it because again, for me, it's aesthetically pleasing and it has those different quotes too. And then of course, this is the book that I was mentioning, The Stress Solution. And then I mentioned Insight Timer a couple slides ago, and this is the meditation app. So you can use this consistently. This isn't what this webinar is about, meditation, but meditation is just so useful in terms of gratitude, in terms of being present, in terms of your well-being. And so even if it's not something that you enjoy, they have meditations for beginners, they have breathing exercises, it's really comprehensive and it's free, so definitely check it out. And then I wanted to highlight these links too. So Berkeley has a page that is solely focused on greater good and well-being and the different areas that contribute to one's well-being. So there's, I think, a page on happiness, there's a page on gratitude, and they have just a bunch of different areas with lots of research, and blog articles, etc. So a lot of good information. So I had a feeling that I wouldn't take too much time, and because this isn't as interactive as it normally could be, I would love to hear from you guys in the chat, or I can unmute everyone. That might be helpful. I'll probably do that. But is there anything from this presentation that you may want to try implementing or that is somewhat of a takeaway for you? Okay. Rachel, I see you've raised your hand. Let me just figure out how to do this. Okay. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you on my end.
So in one of the research articles that you were referencing, I don't remember which one it was, but in regards to having the different groups, one that was meeting and talking about kind of the stressors of the week, and then another group that was talking about the things that they found gratitude for the week or not, that kind of thing. It made me think about what I do for work, which is I work with adults and children with mental health disorders and cognitive disabilities. And one of the strategies that we use, particularly when we're doing daily check-ins or if we do morning meeting type scenarios, we do what's called like a high and low of the day. So people really seem to look forward to that. It's a nice way to kind of check in and see where people are at. But seeing the research that you were referencing makes me kind of consider trying to just focus on the highs of the week, the positives, and thinking about, let's talk about, what things can you take away from the week that were really successful, and then kind of spinning it a little bit. It's just kind of making me consider changing it up and seeing how effective that is for our individuals as well. So thank you.
Yeah, and of course, and that sounds really interesting. Even what you were saying, because I think it is still just as valuable to acknowledge the lows like you do and what challenges are currently happening, but being able to express both, it's kind of a double whammy there too. How do you notice that it works out for you so far? Well, you were saying it is pretty successful and people look forward to it. Do you notice a difference when people talk about the lows?
So it's funny because it definitely depends on first of all, the individual that's sharing as well as what the low is. Mm-hmm. So if it's a very dramatic low that gets everyone going and talking about it, we can focus a lot of our energy on the negativity. So we need to kind of, the staff and myself have to really focus on trying to redirect. Mm-hmm. But I do find it's pretty helpful. I find I in looking and hearing your presentation, one of the ways that I'm considering maybe changing it up is sharing one low from the week and 3 highs from the week.
Ooh.
And trying to kind of balance it that way so that instead of just getting rid of the lows, because we all have lows, and I think that especially with working with children and adults with mental health disorders, it's important to validate those lows, but not dwell on them and talk about like, okay, great. That's, thanks for sharing that. Let's talk about 3 great things that happened this week, or 3. I love the questions that you had too about like, what's something that you did to improve somebody's day and what's something happened to me that improved my day, and kind of having that maybe be a starting point for those discussions.
Yeah. Please let me know how that goes. I'm very curious.
I will.
Thank you so much. Okay, looking in the chat, I see Joyce said, love the idea of the gratitude buddy. Yes, that I've heard that from a couple of people to where they have someone that they talk to. And again, I think that you kind of differentiate who you can talk to about a lot of the good things in your life, and who is probably best to vent to, unless it's the same people. You just may notice that if you talk about good things with specific people, they might be the kind of people that think, oh, she lives a lucky life, that's why she's experiencing so much gratitude. But knowing who you can have for that, super important. Carah Solemsaas says, I would start with the guiding questions nightly to remind me to be grateful. It sounds simple, but I hope to be habit forming. Yeah. So in terms of habit forming too, again, it's so hard to just jump into something that you're not used to doing, that's not a habit. And it is ambitious for us to want to do things every day. So what was helpful for me, of course, was setting a reminder on my phone and having that so that I know to do it, and having it next to my nightstand so that I see it and it's kind of a visual cue for me. But I'm curious, does anyone else have a current gratitude practice? And if they do, what helps them remind them, or, what information can you give us about that? Okay, Kiri. So it's super helpful for people to raise your hands. I think that's just the easiest way. Hey, Kiri.
Hi. So I just started journaling my gratitude, I think about 2 weeks ago, because I think definitely during this time, like I'm also in grad school and it can be very stressful. And then overall, everything happening worldwide and with COVID, it's kind of easy to focus on the negative things. Mm-hmm. So I just started journaling my gratitude, what I was thankful for each day, and my small interactions with people, because I don't really interact with too many people now. And, that could be through texting someone, calling them, or, just interacting with my roommate, and, what made me happy, and, what was positive for my day. I just jumped into it, but I feel like my days are kind of long now. So yeah. At the end of the day, I'm like, I need to write in my journal, but I don't have any specific tips in particular.
So that's so awesome that you're starting to do that. And that's amazing that you're able to fit it into your schedule too, and you kind of are seeing the importance of it and reflecting on those small interactions. I think that many of us are in that same realm where we're not seeing as many people as we used to. And so how can we take that time to reflect, especially now? So I'm curious, because you don't have any special tips, of course, is what you were saying, but do you have it next to your bedstand? Is that what you're saying? I mean, how do you kind of remember to do it?
I do stay at my desk a lot,
Mm-hmm.
a computer, and I'm studying or taking a class. So it's like right on my desk, right where I can see it. And
Mm-hmm.
I've cleared my desk lately, so I feel like I have a good clear view of it as well. So it's kind of a visual cue as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that is helpful to have it in view.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. So again, that visual cue is super important. If you're a grad student or anyone that is working from home, having it somewhere where you're going to see it is just super helpful, because we just can't expect our brains to remember all these things. Our brain is taking in so much information day to day. You're asking a lot for it. And it's not to say that you can't handle it, but just generally speaking, right? Anyone else? Is there anything else that you might want to try implementing, or that you might be already doing that you want to further enhance, keep doing? Well, I'll leave that question open. So I wanted to share next. Oops, I think you can see that in the chat. Okay, I accidentally moved this little chat thing in there. Sorry, it's going to be on the side of the screen. Now this is a perfect time for questions too. If you have any further questions on what I shared, anything that's come up for you. And then I also wanted to share my personal email. So carah.solemsaas@gmail.com, where you can find me if you have any questions in general, or again, anything about health coaching, anything about my current position too. The classes that I teach are for older adults, and they are free for the community because we are grant funded. So if you know of anyone that is an older adult that needs wellness programs too, please reach me there. Looks like we have something in the chat. And then it looks like Chelsea, who's with Rachel here, saying, remembering that waking up is a blessing and to be thankful about that. And it helps start the day in the right direction. It's true. And so, one thing that is kind of a buzzword now too, but I still think it's super important, are affirmations. Could be a mantra, however you want to call it, but those, even something like a prayer, whatever works for you, is waking up, thinking about what are those blessings that you have, starting off the day right. So I also wanted to share my Instagram page. It's at Tuning In From Within. It's going to build upon itself more, I think, when the podcast gets going. However, I am just not a social media savvy person, and so I'm not constantly on there because I do have to take care of my well-being too. But there's a lot of different health and wellness and well-being related tips on there, and would love to connect with you in that way too. Does anyone have any further questions? All right. Well, I do want to also show you, here's my references page. Oh, looks like there's something in the chat. Rachel said, this has been so helpful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I appreciate everyone taking the time to be here with me today. Yes. So I also received a message saying self-gratitude is important. So being thankful for just opening our eyes and having another day. Yeah, it's very true. Again, we get caught up in the busyness and we just don't take that time to reflect because maybe we don't have that time to reflect. But truthfully, you only need a couple minutes to reap the benefits that I had talked about before. Waking up, feeling grateful for yourself because you made it. You made it to another day. So thank you so much for being here with me. Like I was saying before, I really appreciate it. And I'm so grateful for the experience. And I hope that you find something positive within gratitude too, and you can add it to your set of tools. Thank you, everyone.